In this example, we create a class, a user-defined class, meaning it doesn't come with the language. And I'm going to choose an example from Zybooks, the restaurant class. So here we are in NetBeans, and I've just created my project, and I've called it Restaurant EX1, Example 1. And now I want to add a class to it. So I'm going to click on the package, and I'm going to say New Java Class. And I'm going to call this Restaurants, and I'm going to keep to the Zybooks way of doing things, which is to start objects and classes with uppercase. Think of string. String has an uppercase S. And then methods start with a lowercase character. So this is restaurant, uppercase R, and just finish. And that gives me the restaurant class. So I have to think what goes into this class. And Zybooks has restaurant has two things. One is a name and one is a rating. And so we will add those. You'll notice that I call them attributes. They are attributes. Some people call them data elements. And a string, a name with type string, and a rating of type int. Well, all well and good, but we need to be able to construct these objects. And we call these constructors. I have 3 of them here. The first one is the default constructor. It's got no parameters. And then that sets the name to no name and the rating to 0. If I have one parameter, the name, then that is the n, I'm going to make name equal to n and keep rating as 0. If I get 2 parameters, then the name is going to be n and the rating is going to be r, whatever the value of r is. So that's how we can construct our restaurant. And you'll notice something different here. It's not public static return type name. It's just public. Public, and then the constructor is the same name as the object or as the class. 3 of them all call the same thing. How does the machine know which one to choose? It goes by the number and the type of the parameters. So no parameters, it'll go with the first one. 1 string parameter, it'll go with the second one. 2 parameters of the type, first a string and then an int, it'll choose the third one. And if I flip over to main, I can now construct 2 restaurants. I can definitely construct more than 2, but right here I've got 2. The first one I'm using the default constructor, and the second one I'm using a name and a rating. This word new you've seen before. We have used it with arrays. When we used arrays, arrays are objects. Whenever you are creating an object, you have to use a constructor. And in order to use the constructor, you need this word new. So I've got 2 restaurants here created using, if I can get back to here, using these constructors. Well, all well and good, but we need to be able to do something with these restaurants. And the whole idea of having your object in a different file is so that eventually you can create this beautiful object type. Again, always think back to string. So, we have strings, we can use strings, everybody can use strings, we can put them in a library if we want. And that's the whole idea here. We will create our own class. We will be able to reuse this class. We won't have the class in the same project as the rest of the project, as main or as any of the methods that are calling it. But right now we do have it in the same project, and that's because we need to write it, verify that it is correct before we package it up. So it's a somewhat artificial environment because I'm writing main, it's in the same project. Of course I have access to this, but I'm going to pretend that I don't want this class to give me all of the access that I want or need. Much like string, you cannot change the length of a string. Monday is of length 6. You can't decide that you want it to be of length 7. So some things you cannot change with string, and similarly we'll get to a point where main will not be able to alter things within our class. But right now, like I said, it's kind of artificial, but we have to make sure that this class works. So we've got constructors. Well, main maybe needs to access to be able to print the name or something like that. So it has to be able to access name. But right here, we've said it's private. We've said, no, 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 you cannot access private. So if we try in here to output, say, a name, and let me just put the code in to do that. So here I'm trying to print out X's name, and when I run, I've got a whole bunch of error messages here, and that's because I'm not allowed to access name. If I were, incidentally, this is the correct way to access it without the parentheses after name, because name is an attribute and not a method. So that's not allowed. So how is main going to access name? Well, the class has to give access. And in order to give access, it has to provide methods. So we'll go back to here and provide methods in order that main will get access. And here I have written get name and get rating, which returns the name and returns the rating. You'll know the return type here. You'll notice the return type here is string and here int, because rating is an int and name is a string. So there is a return type with the accessors. These are called accessors, sometimes called getters, but these are formally called accessors in order that main or any calling method can access the name. And if we go to our example now, and instead of trying to straight access the name, we can print x.getName. And now I do have to put the parentheses because getName is a method. And here we go, Mike's. So I was able to get a hold of the name for the restaurant whose variable name is X. Going back to our class, these are our gets, our accessors. We need to be able to alter the name or the rating. And here we have set name and set rating. These are formally called modifiers. Some folks call them setters. They both return void. Setters do not return anything. They alter the attributes. Now, we might not be willing to allow this modification, we do not have to provide getters and setters for all the attributes, and sometimes we don't. But in this case, we will. So we have getters and setters, accessors and modifiers for our attributes. So far, so good. And now we are able to alter the rating and the name of the restaurant called R. You'll see here it was created by the default constructor, and so its name was no name and its rating was 0, and now we have altered those and we're going to print them out. I'll just comment this one out so that we print them down here. And now we've altered the rating and the name of the restaurant called R. You will recall it was created using the default constructor and therefore had a name of no name and a rating of 0. We altered those, and now we're going to print out the name and the rating. And now we have it called Karina's with a rating of 5. So our set rating worked. Our gets and sets are working so far. Time to move on. And what I would like to do is to be able to print out SOUT tab the restaurant, print out X. And if I do this, and I get something very strange here. This is not at all what I was expecting. And that's because the machine doesn't know how to print out a restaurant. We have to tell it. And the way that we tell it is to go back to our class here and provide a toString method. So it is public. Its return type is string. And its name is toString. And it returns a string. So what does it return? Whatever we want it to say when we print it out. So let's decide on this, that we want it to print out the name followed by the words has rating followed by the actual rating. And you'll notice it's a straight return. It's returning this string. And I want to print out X. Then I have Mike's has rating 4. So that is coming from that toString. You will notice that we do not say X dot toString. But you'll see that works also, but there's absolutely no need for that, just X. So we're going to print out the value of X because we've got that toString. So if ever you try to print something out and you get some very weird answer, you're probably missing your toString.